So you're thinking of moving to Austin, Texas, especially with the new year well underway, and you're wanting to weigh the good with the bad. Well, on this channel, we pride ourselves in being brutally honest, and in this video, we're going to be talking about the new pros and cons of living in Austin, Texas for 2022. So if that's what you'd like to learn about, stay tuned. Hey again, everybody. This is Frank with the team of agents at JB Goodwin Realtors. Every week we put out tons of new content about living in Austin, Texas, the good and the bad. So consider subscribing if you haven't already and ring the little bell to get notified whenever we put out a new video. In addition to that, we love the reach outs we get now every day from people just like you in need of our help when relocating to Austin, Texas. So keep them coming. Don't hesitate. Whether you're 9 days away or 90, reach out to our team. Whether you shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call any day of the week, any time of day. So yes, as mentioned in this video, we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of living in Austin, Texas. And Austin, Texas, over the past just year alone, has changed in a lot of ways. In some cases, it has changed for the better, and in some cases, it's changed for the worse. So the goal of this video is to ultimately help you arrive at your own conclusion as to whether or not living in Austin, Texas is the right move for you. So let's get to it. Pro number one is going to be what is actually bringing a majority of people to Austin, Texas in the first place, and that is going to be its jobs, its workforce, its economy. So as it currently stands, Austin, Texas is absolutely booming. And in particular, for example, you have healthcare, which is a humongous industry here. Hospitals are popping up all over the place. The construction's kind of ugly if you ask me, but that is going to be one of the many influxes of jobs that brings people here to begin with. And of course, in addition to that, the most obvious is going to be that tech workforce. So you have IBM in Austin, you have Amazon in Austin, you have Facebook in Austin, you have Google in Austin, you have Samsung in Austin, you have Tesla in Austin. You have so many of these tech companies, large and small, migrating here, creating quite a booming economy. And yes, it is affecting the cost of living, which we'll get to in this video. But as it currently stands, a majority of the clients we've helped relocate to Austin, Texas, chances are they're going to be working in tech or in healthcare. A lot of them are also going to be small business owners. A lot of them are also going to be investors. So in regards to those types of jobs and those types of industries, Austin, Texas could be a great idea for you. Pro number two is going to be what I call selection. And it is something that Austin, Texas really has going for it. And what I mean by selection is a lot of people, especially ones that we've helped relocate here, they have the idea that if we're moving to Austin, Texas, we absolutely have to move to Austin, Texas specifically, more particularly the city limits. So a lot of people look at what surrounds the city of Austin. They see Dripping Springs, they see Lakeway, they see Westlake Hills, they say Bee Cave, they see a lot of different options. And a lot of these options are going to be at least, at minimum, $600,000 on average, easily $850,000, easily into the millions. And they get scared, they get discouraged, and what I tell a lot of people, what our team tells a lot of people, is the truth of the matter that Austin, because it's in Texas, which is such a large state, Austin itself is deceivingly large as well. So yes, when you're in the city, it's going to have kind of a small city feel, kind of a small town feel, which is part of its charm. But when you zoom out and you see all of these different areas, whether it be the Budas, the San Marcoses, Liberty Hill, Leander, Round Rock, Pflugerville, Georgetown, Kyle, Manor, all of these different areas, then you realize, as overwhelming as it might be, that you have quite a number of options if you don't want to be either in the city or close to the city. And naturally, of course, a lot of these options are going to be more affordable, less densely populated, and an overall lesser cost of living when compared to Austin's, which is going to be over the national average. So just keep that in mind. If you have your eye on Austin, but you might be a little bit intimidated by Austin, rest assured you have options that can match either your budget or your desired lifestyle, so on and so forth. Moving right along so that we can eventually get to the juicy cons everyone's waiting for in the latter half of this video. But first, we do have pro number three, which is going to be the winters here, or lack thereof. And I do acknowledge in a number of our previous videos, this is a subject I have touched on before, but with it being still relevant, pardon me as I talk about it once more. So what's inspiring me to talk about this is, even to this day, a lot of the reach outs we get are going to be from people who are either from Oregon or from Washington State, Montana, New York State, Canada, people who are sick and tired of these harsh winters that seemingly feel like they last 6 months, they last 9 months. You're always shoveling snow, and that's something I just cannot relate to. I've experienced snow, but I've never lived with it for too long at a time, you know what I mean? So that is something that when you come to Texas is going to be dramatically different. So a typical winter here is going to be usually in the 40s, oftentimes the 50s. Like today, as it is early in 2022 in the winter season, I'm wearing a t-shirt and my heat is off because it is 65 degrees outside, and that's normal. Now, granted, there are going to be some days where it's going to be in the high 30s, or maybe the low is going to get into the 20s, and that's generally it. Now, I will acknowledge back in 2021, we had that horrific snowstorm where we lost power, we lost water. The Texas grid was not equipped to handle such frigid temperatures, as we are a warm weather state, and it was a crisis for a lot of people. However, that was the first of its kind since the 1960s, which means it took 60 years for us to experience something that intense, and otherwise pretty much every year, the worst it gets is a little bit of sleet or ice, not even really snow. So barring the occasional anomaly of a catastrophic freeze and snowstorm, your winters here are going to be quite comfortable. Up next at pro number 4 is going to be the culture and or the people of Austin, Texas, or better yet, just Texas itself, the South, etc., etc. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because even still, as much as I've talked about it in the past, it is still a relevant conversation that we have with our comments that we see a lot, that we have in the phone calls we get a lot, and the people we inevitably help close on their homes here in Austin, Texas. And that is that people here, it's not just a stereotype, it's not just a cliche. People are going to be generally warmer, friendlier, more genuine, and it's something that's hard to describe unless you've lived here, right? Like I have. And if you're walking your dog and you see another stranger with their dog, you'll strike up conversation and they'll invite you to their garage parties or their backyard barbecue cookouts or things of that nature. Or if you're merging onto a certain lane in the freeway, some guy in a big truck that looks menacing will probably let you in and tip his hat. And it's just normal here. And I do acknowledge people, say, from the Northeast or other places that are more densely populated or maybe have colder climates. I'm really not sure what the psychology of it is. They might be thrown by that. I mean, some people get uncomfortable, or they think it's fraudulent, or they think it's fake or pushy, and I have to remind them, no, that's just how things are here. That is something that I certainly missed about living in Texas. When I did live in California, it's really something that was absent there, that you don't realize what you have until it's gone. Overall, it is going to be quite a nice surprise and something that could entice you. Okay, so pro number 5 is interesting because while it is our last pro, it is also going to serve as our very first con. So con number 1 as well, paired with pro number 5. And the reason that is because this certain subject, which can be controversial depending on who you ask, has certain perspectives that could be viewed as a con or viewed as a pro, depending on who you are and which walk of life you come from. And that would be the subject of how COVID is treated in not just Austin, Texas, but Texas itself. And so, for starters, a lot of people might find our treatment of COVID to be a massive pro. And in a lot of the cases of people who've reached out to us from perhaps stricter states like California or like New York or like Oregon, they look at Texas and they see absolute freedom. And they might, a lot of the people tell us that they're feeling scared, that they're feeling forced, that things are just getting pretty bad where they live, and that's their perspective. And so they look at Texas, and I'm just going to tell you, there really are no vaccine passports here. There really, at least minimally, are places that are going to require proof of vaccination. There are no mandates in that necessarily. And of course, with the masks are often encouraged in different establishments and companies and restaurants and things like that, but they are not mandated, barring just a few. Like the other day, I went to the Apple store to pick up a new watch, and they were mandating masks in there. But that was the first time I'd seen it mandated in well over a year. Now, the reason this could be a con is because the other valid perspective is, well, how selfish could you be? Just wear your mask, just get vaccinated, and if places require proof of vaccination, that's their choice, and that's a good way to keep the disease from spreading and things of that nature. So they might look at Texas and think, well, no, that sounds dangerous, that sounds irresponsible, it sounds selfish, it sounds scary. and a very optimal place for this virus to spread based on more relaxed options, if you will, to have the option. And so I acknowledge this, and that's why I'm presenting it as both a pro and a con. Yes, we take it seriously here. No, we're not trying to be irresponsible, but something that makes Texas, Texas, traditionally speaking, and not even politically speaking, has just always been the right to maintain your own freedom, right? The right to choose. And so that's really the reality here. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm giving it to you straight because, you know, it might be something that scares you, or it might be something that excites you. And so just keep that in mind. Moving right along to con number 2, which is a big one in my opinion, and that would be the market here for real estate in Austin, Texas. And look, we keep it brutally honest on this channel. We don't like to be those more traditional, sleazy, slimy realtors saying everything's perfect and worry not, and everything is just unicorns and rainbows. We try to be as blunt as possible, and at the risk of discouraging you or disenchanting you or dissuading you from Austin, Texas. It's something that we feel a responsibility to keep it real. So the truth of the matter is that the market here in Austin, Texas is not as horrific as it was, say, 6 months ago, say a year ago. However, it is still pretty bad. And what I mean by that is it's simply competitive. So for example, a lot of the houses that are pre-owned are going quick with multiple offers, and a lot of new build inventory that, for example, is first come, first serve, is being sold out just in a heartbeat. So that is a reality right now. It is still a seller's market, and Austin, Texas, in addition to the market being a seller's market, is such a hot spot for relocation to begin with the demand here and the tech jobs. And so, yeah, I'm not trying to scare you guys, but it's just something to be aware of, not to be scared of. Just the more you know is our goal here. And rest assured, I mean, people are still closing all the time. We have a number of homes under contract right now, tons of closings coming up. So it's not like there's just no hope. Of course not. That's how we make a living, and people close every day. That is the truth of it. People always win somehow, right? So rest assured, you're not going to be completely out of luck. But if you're contemplating a move to Austin, Texas, don't expect it to be sunshine and rainbows and a walk in the park. It could be a bit of a journey to find the right home for you. It's more about getting in than it is getting a deal. And that's just something I want to make you guys aware of. So take from that what you will. Now, real quickly, before we move on to the final 3 cons on this list, go ahead and drop a comment down below with any questions or opinions for us to get involved in. If we've been providing any value for you in this video, we ask that you consider liking this video, as it really helps our channel grow. Remember to subscribe, and lastly, share it with anyone you know who's wanting to learn more about living in Austin, Texas. All right, up next at con number 3, we have the traffic and construction in Austin, Texas. And yes, this is to be expected, but it is also so worth mentioning. And I'm just gonna get right into it. The truth of the matter is, Austin, Texas is not Houston, it's not Dallas. It never was intended to be a city like that. It was first and foremost just a college town once upon a time that grew rapidly in popularity. And so the population coming here vastly outpaced the city's infrastructure to keep up. And what does that mean? It means that they are always in construction trying to keep up with the influx of people moving here. That has always been the case, and especially in the past 5 to 10 years, it is especially the case with the rapid influx of people who are seemingly flocking here all the time from everywhere. So the good news, the silver lining, is that they are building and constructing and doing their best to make things smooth and easy in terms of driving, in terms of housing, in terms of neighborhoods and things like that. And so that's yay, you know, go Austin for that, for doing your best. But the truth of the matter is the traffic is getting so much worse, noticeably worse. It's not like it's been a gradual thing. No, like year to date, just in certain areas at certain times of day, I've noticed it gets way more backed up than it used to, which is something that it's not necessarily enticing or something that you really ever get used to, at least in my case. I mean, if you're coming from San Francisco or Manhattan and you're used to that traffic, it's nothing like that, rest assured. So I'm not trying to make it sound like doomsday over here, but for Austin, Texas, which was once just a laid back, chill college town, it is starting to look a little bit more like a Los Angeles, not quite to that extent, but we're heading in that direction, certainly. So that's just something to keep in mind And if you are going to be commuting and you don't like seeing construction oftentimes, it might not be right for you. Up next, we have our second to last con, which is going to be con number 4, and that is the subject of crime in Austin, Texas. And this is something I feel that is very important to talk about for people who are relocating here. And it's simply because crime statistics here are not just gradually increasing, because in a lot of cities in the country, you'll have little spikes in crime or maybe gradual statistics that get worse over years. But in the case of Austin, Texas, I kid you not, it has rapidly increased, and in a way that alarms local residents, in a way that creates talking points for local Austinites, and in a way that is starting to scare a lot of Austinites as well. So aggravated assaults are up, burglaries are up, murders are up. There have been several, not just a few, several shootings in the past couple of years alone in downtown Austin. And it's not for me to say why. It's not the channel that we do here to get into politics and things like that, because yes, in today's day and age, everything gets politicized and people are easy and quick to flock to their sides of the argument. And there's a lot more arguing than there is listening, and we get nowhere, and I hate all that. So I'm not going to try to get into that. But a lot of people are talking about why it's happening. They're trying to figure out how we can solve this, and they're pointing fingers at defunding the police, or they're pointing fingers at this or at that, and it's just getting messy. And I'll save the why for you to talk about uncomfortably at Thanksgiving with distant family members. But for us, our job is to tell you the facts, and that is the facts. You see a lot of tents and stuff like that, not just in downtown, but in places north or south of downtown where they didn't used to be. So it is pretty quickly and alarmingly becoming a less safe place to live. And granted, if you are going to be in one of the suburbs and you're going to raise a family and you're good schools, it's less of an issue there. You're not going to sleep with one eye open. But if you're going to be spending a lot of your time either working or playing downtown, I'm not trying to say don't come here, but certainly keep that in mind and just be aware of the trajectory that Austin, Texas is heading. Okay, last but certainly not least, arriving at our fifth and final con, that is going to be the affordability in Austin, Texas, or I should rather say lack thereof. And truth of the matter is, Austin, Texas, for those of you who don't know yet, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you've done your homework, but in case you haven't, Austin, Texas is above and beyond the most expensive city to live in the state of Texas. So let's swallow that pill and get used to that realization and accept it so we can move on to the details, right? And the details are, the median home price throughout Austin city limits and that surrounding area is going to be easily around $600,000. And it has gotten there very quickly. It's not like it was $550 3 years ago and now it's $600. No, it went easily from the low fours to the high fours to the mid fives to now around the $600s. And that can turn a lot of people off, myself included. Now, what I will say is I am talking more about Austin city limits and its own central area as opposed to the suburbs of Austin, Texas. Because in the past, I have made it a talking point as a pro in some of our videos, which is the affordability in the greater Austin area. And that's something I touched on briefly earlier in this video that a lot of people don't get, is that if you are wanting a 4-bedroom, 3-bath or a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you want a backyard and you want to be close to good schools or maybe even a theater room, you can find those in certain suburbs and areas outside of the city limits for something in the high 300s or the low 400s or the high 400s, approaching $500,000, which is really the sweet spot number you're going to find for a lot of these suburbs that have nice houses, new houses, or just newer, better areas. So again, I'm not trying to dissuade you, I'm not trying to disenchant you or discourage you. And again, I will repeat, there are more affordable options outside of Austin, Texas specifically, but having said that, it is getting worse and worse and worse. And naturally, anything close enough to Austin, these suburbs that are still easy enough to get into, are soon enough, 5 to 10 years, going to be not affordable anymore. So that's just something to keep in mind. So there you have it. You know, Austin, Texas is very interesting to think about, very interesting to talk about. It's a very unique city to go over its pros and its cons. And for a lot of people, it just checks all their boxes. For a lot of people, it probably checks none of your boxes. And for a majority of people, it checks some and it leaves a lot of other boxes unchecked. And regardless of where you are in that spectrum of how right Austin is for you. Hopefully we've succeeded in our goal of just helping you arrive at your own conclusion. And maybe you want to have something closer to the city, maybe you'd like to be somewhere maybe a bit further away from the city, or anything in between. And that is what we are here for, making that move as smooth as possible, helping people relocate to Austin, Texas. But you've got to reach out to us. So again, don't hesitate, keep them coming, whether you're 9 days away or 90. Shoot our team a text, give us a call, send us an email any day of the week, any time of day. We've got your back when moving to Austin, Texas. And again, we put out tons of new content every week about living in Austin, Texas, the good and the bad. So remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the little bell to get notified whenever we put out a new video. Comment down below, like this video if we've been providing any value for you. Share it with anyone you know wanting to learn more about living in Austin, Texas. And until the next one, you guys, my name is Frank, and we will absolutely catch you later.